I'm Harry Binswanger, the HB in HBTV. Today I'm very pleased to have a special guest, Peter Schwartz, a longtime friend, a philosopher, and the author of The Tyranny of Need. Peter, welcome to HBTV.
Thank you, Harry. Here's the book if anyone wants to get a visual of it. And I'm pleased to be on your show. It's very exciting.
Are you hearing me? Anybody hearing a second voice? Let me see if I can get rid of that. Excuse. Um, I'm getting the live screen, Irene,
Yeah,
with a delay.
does one of you have the video open at the same time?
Apparently, I have some I have the studio launched in some way.
Can you turn the studio off? Can you delete the tab of the studio?
I don't know how to get this other than maybe I can turn the volume down on the laptop.
Turn the studio off? Can you delete the tab?
No, I don't know where it is. I don't see it. Let me just turn the volume down or put this farther away. All right, how does this sound?
I think that's better, yeah.
Okay, I can make other arrangements, but I think we better get started.
Yeah.
So, the Tyranny of Need is the companion to what I did last time with Nikos, which is discuss Ayn Rand's refutation of altruism. The Tyranny of Need is a masterful discussion of the consequences as well as the irrationality of the morality of self-sacrifice. And that's the subject we're going to talk about today, is the consequences of accepting individually and socially the altruist morality of self-sacrifice. Peter, do you want to begin?
Yeah, let's just be sure that people understand what altruism actually demands. Altruism does not say help out somebody who deserves some assistance on your part. Altruism says help someone out regardless of whether he deserves it or not. Help someone out in spite of the fact that justice may demand that you not deal with him. Altruism says, in fact, to the extent that someone does not deserve your help, that is the extent to which you have a moral duty to help him, because it's a greater sacrifice. Altruism demands that you sacrifice, you give up your idea of what justice demands, give up your idea that justice is the principle by which you should deal with other people, give up your convictions and your money for the sake of someone who simply lacks what you are able to provide. So to make this more specific, altruism does not, or the essence of altruism is not simply, let's say, if your neighbor's house burns down, help him out if you can. That kind of generosity is perfectly compatible with an egoist philosophy. It's perfectly appropriate to have a benevolent relationship with people and help them out if they're in trouble through no fault of their own, and you can provide it without any real sacrifice on your part. But that is not what altruism demands. Altruism says, help out your neighbor whose house burned down because he burned it down himself. Or help him out because he burned his house down in the process of trying to burn your house down. That's what altruism demands. It's not, altruism does not say help out a friend. It doesn't even say help out a stranger. Altruism says love thy enemy. What does that mean? It means sacrifice yourself for the sake of someone who is out to destroy you, who is evil. Abandon any concern with your self-interest, give it up, provide for people in need regardless of why that need arises. And,
Well,
you know,
can I
go ahead. Yeah,
jump
go
in
ahead.
here? The question on people's mind will be, well, no one really believes that. I mean, that's a caricature of what altruism is. And I know you have an answer to that, so enlighten us.
Yes, I'm glad you bring that up. Here's a perfect concretization of this mentality. You know, we had, it was it 2.5 years ago, October 7th, when Hamas committed those horrible atrocities against Israel. Many people were surprised at the immediate, virtually immediate aftermath of that action. What happened was there arose a sympathetic response to Hamas, sympathetic response to Palestinians in general, but particularly to Hamas in light of the aftermath of this horrible attack. And many normal, decent people couldn't fathom it. You know, they saw the brutality that occurred, and how could people support Hamas? Now, many people attribute it to anti-Semitism, but that's not really the fundamental explanation. The explanation really is that people looked at Hamas, looked at the whole population of Gaza, of the Palestinian population, and they, as compared to Israel, and they said, look, here's a bunch of people who are in need. These are people who are poor, they're hungry, they're oppressed, they're suffering. If they're suffering, they demand our attention. Their suffering needs to be alleviated. It doesn't matter why they're suffering. It doesn't matter that they themselves are the cause of their suffering, that the Palestinians are responsible by supporting Hamas, which is a authoritarian, a dictatorship oppressing them. That doesn't matter. All that matters is the Palestinians are poor, the Israelis are relatively rich. We have to support Hamas. Now, this is the best current example to illustrate the real horror, the evil, the injustice demanded by altruism. It says, help these brutal oppressors, help these the people who committed indescribable atrocities. Forget that. All that matters is they're in need, therefore should be helped by us. We have a moral duty to provide for them, and not for Israel.
And that was the meaning, the real meaning, I think, of you have to view what they said. You have to view it in context. You have to contextualize it. And the contextualization, after the rationalizations are stripped away, is they are poor. They are suffering. They are in need. And Israel's rich and successful. So it is evil, and the Palestinians are good. That's the contextualizing, because none of the other incidental facts that they could bring in would support their cause,
Yes.
they being a pro-Palestinian group. Yaron Brook, not a refugee, sorry, immigrant from Israel, who's now chairman of the board of the Ayn Rand Institute, said decades ago that he saw the public opinion switched against Israel in Europe when they won the 6 Days War so easily. They suddenly were the successful ones. Before, they had been the underdogs, establishing a state by means of Nazi refugees, establishing a state in the desert and working to make it bloom as best they could. But now they'd succeeded. And success is the crime under altruism. Failure, suffering, need is the apotheosis of virtue, of value under altruism. That's why Ayn Rand calls it a morality of death, because it's the absence of value that gives you a claim to the values of those who have produced those values.
And that attitude has now gradually come to America. Americans now, several polls show, have become more sympathetic to the Palestinians than to Israel. It used to be the reverse. And you would think, God, anybody would think that after October 7th, the whole country would become supporters of Israel. But the opposite has happened. And in large part, it's because of the way in which the conflict, the war, has been presented to the American public by the news media. The American people are bombarded by what? By scenes of people in need. They show supposedly widespread starvation, widespread disease, hospitals
bombing,
being bombed, children walking around with no parents. They show these, as the news media does, as the essence of this conflict, and according to altruism, it is. Altruism says the essence is who is suffering more. It doesn't matter why they're suffering. The cause is irrelevant. Again, I say it's to the contrary. The more that the suffering is self-inflicted, the greater the demand that you sacrifice and provide help to those who are in need. And that's why the attitude in America has now shifted, terribly shifted in support of Hamas and the Palestinians in general over Israel.
And you can see the contrast with 2001, 9/11. The whole world got on America's side. Even the French said, we are all Americans today, because an unprovoked attack killed 3,000, and the world recognized that as a terrible, brutal, irrational, death-worshipping thing. But now, just what is it? It was 23, I believe, October 7th. So that's 22 years later. It's completely reversed. And now it doesn't matter if you kill the successful and the wealthy. Look at this man, Joan guy, who just shot the head of the United Health Service, the CEO, just shot him on the street because he was the head of a successful business, because he was rich. Look at the antagonism to millionaires and billionaires. They're considered to be evil and not paying what they should be paying because they've been selfish, not because of any actual wrongdoing on their part, just they're damned by success. That is what altruism regards as evil.
And it would be interesting if we went a little bit deeper here. because this understanding of the true nature of altruism helps explain a lot of what happens in the world, which seems to be mystifying, which seems to be inexplicable. So if you ask yourself, what is really the most selfish thing one can do? What is the really root act of selfishness? It's thinking. The act of cognition is a unavoidably selfish act. Thinking means you see the world out there, you decide what's true. You decide, for example, I should be an atheist. There's no God, regardless of how many people around you disagree with you and tell you you're going to burn in hell. You decide capitalism is good, regardless of how many people out there tell you you're wrong and socialism is the ideal. Thinking is a selfish action. Altruism, to the extent that people accept it, contradicts this. Altruism says, give up your mind. Surrender it. To what? To other people. Surrender it to what other people tell you. Surrender it to what other people believe. And this is the explanation for, as I said, the seemingly inexplicable things like the Nazi Holocaust. People ask, how is it possible that seemingly normal people would obey orders in concentration camps to send Jews into gas chambers or to perform all kinds of inhuman actions against them? How is this possible? And the answer is because they abandoned their faculty of thinking. The people simply obeyed orders. Obeying orders means I'm going to suspend my mind. I'm going to suspend myself. I'm going to give it over to the person above me, to an authority who's going to tell me what to do. Adolf Eichmann, for example, I think he wrote in one of his diaries fascinating sentences. He said he had always grown up with the idea of obedience. He couldn't conceive of a life without simply following instructions or following orders. And he said, making it even more explicit, he said, I'm paraphrasing now, he said, following orders reduces the need for my thinking. All of the atrocities that are committed on a wide scale, like the Nazi Holocaust and other similar atrocities under totalitarian regimes, is made possible because the people had been conditioned by altruism to surrender their most selfish faculty, their rational thinking. That enables the authorities to tell them what to do and not to have it questioned. That's what altruism results in.
Yeah, let me support that. If other people own you, if you're the reason why you're existing is to serve the needs of others, and that's what altruism holds. That's the only justification for your taking up space on this planet, is that you serve others. If that's true, you can't question what they tell you. So if another person says, I need heroin, you can't say to him, no, look, heroin is not actually helping you. Heroin is destroying you. He says, look, you're here to serve me. Who are you to think? I say I need heroin. Go get me heroin. And there's no answer to that on the philosophy of altruism. So thinking is selfish and is premised on the fact I have my values, I control my mind, I want to know what's true by my standards of right and wrong and true and false. All that goes out the window, and it always has. Charles Manson, the guy who led the helter-skelter assault on Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring, murdered those people in California in the 60s. This is not widely known, but I read the article in Time magazine. He said, my philosophy is, this is Charles Manson, my philosophy is, don't think. So egoism, rationality, and life are on one side. Self-sacrifice, irrationality, and death are on the other side. And did you, it's hard to top that, I know, Peter, but do you want to try?
Well, I'll give you a couple of other examples which altruism provides the explanation for that otherwise don't have any explanation. You remember the phenomenon in Guyana where Jim Jones led hundreds of people. I forget the year. Do you remember the year that was? I don't remember the year.
It was about 1980, roughly, plus or minus one.
Yeah. So he had a cult. He set up this cult in Guyana. People went there. They looked at him as their savior. They just obeyed whatever he told them to do. He was a socialist.
Factually, Peter, he set up the cult in California, where else? And he took them to Guyana.
Okay. And they were there for a while. That was a normal cult, if there is such a thing. And then, because there was the danger of a congressional investigation into what he was doing, there's a lot of fraud going, he was defrauding people. He got the whole bunch of the hundreds of people together and instructed them on drinking poisoned Kool-Aid. This is where the Kool-Aid phrase comes from. And people did it. They drank it. They gave it to their little children. Now, maybe there were a couple of dissidents. I don't think so, but overwhelmingly, all the people there simply drank poison because he told them to. Now, how could you explain that? Except that they had abandoned their minds. They no longer had independent minds. They had abandoned it, which means they'll do whatever they're told. If your mind is empty, someone has to fill it. Altruism says, don't be selfish and go by your mind, go by somebody else's. And that's what they did. So, altruism is not this benevolent philosophy, this benevolent morality, which tells you, be generous to other people if they're in trouble, see if you could help them out. This is a distortion of what altruism really is. Altruism is a morality of death. It demands that you care nothing for your own life. You give it away to anyone who has a demand for it, anyone who has a claim on it, anyone who has a need for it. Your life is his, not yours.
It's as Ayn Rand called it, it's the morality of non-you.
Yeah.
Everybody's entitled except you. And the greater their lack of creation and success, the more they fail and cause their own failure, the more they can claim from those who don't fail. So that's why it's a morality of death. Now, always there's this voice in the population that says, that's an extreme, we don't have to go to extremes. And it's true in a certain sense. If you're going to be a consistent altruist, you're going to kill yourself and give your body to whatever you think is the greatest need. Give it to cannibals, give it to grow flowers on, give it to keep the climate static, whatever you think is the claim beneficiary, and it doesn't matter as long as it isn't you. Full sacrifice, Ayn Rand says, means full destruction, full surrender of everything and therefore dying. So it can't be practiced consistently. So what does it mean to have two opposite claims on you? One is you want to live. The other is you think you should die. It means you go forward a little bit and you go back a little bit. You go forward a little bit and you can go back a little bit. And where is the ultimate direction? What is the net outcome of that? I think we know on the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country. It's destruction. It's the progressive march to more and more statism, authoritarianism, enforced altruism, and less of the original right to the pursuit of happiness, your own selfish, private, personal happiness. So you cannot combine food and poison. Only poison, only death can win in a compromise between opposite principles. And the libertarians who say, and some conservatives who say, well, altruism is a personal decision. As long as the government doesn't force it on you, it doesn't matter. They neglect to realize that property is a moral relationship to a good. Your property is what you rightfully own. If other people, by virtue of not having money, own your money, if you don't give it to them, then the state can force you to surrender it in the name of the property rights of the poor. They own your wealth. They own you. And the government cannot say, well, he has a protected area in which he can stop you from getting what's yours. That would be like saying, I buy a car, I don't have to pay for it because I have a right to my money. No, you owe that money to the person that you bought the car from. And you owe your life under altruism to everybody who has less than you. So it can't be combined, and it can't be just voluntary. It never has been. That's never happened. People who will not accept a lot of altruism into their own life feel perfectly justified in voting to have other people's sacrifice fund the help of the most vulnerable among us. Notice that phrase, which you hear everywhere, the most vulnerable amongst us. The ones with the greatest need are the ones we have to worship. Those are the ones we live to serve. Those are the ones that if we don't act to serve, we're amoral or immoral. They're the apex of the pyramid of value. Non-value is the apex of the pyramid of moral value.
Let me add something which is also kind of a source of confusion. There is nothing necessarily wrong with providing charity. I provide charity to various entities. But two elements need to be present. One is you need to decide that they actually deserve your help, whoever it is you're giving it to. And second, and more important, you have to grasp that you are doing this as an act of generosity and not as a duty. You do not have a moral obligation to help someone simply because he's in need. Now, you can do it, as I say, if they deserve it, if they're in some misfortune, not through their own doing, and you can help them, that's fine. But you do not have a duty to do it. They don't have a claim on you, and they should thank you for it. They should not regard it as being owed to them. They should not regard it as they're entitled to it. They should say, thank you for your generosity, and you should recognize it as such.
So the extent of this in people's souls When you check out at the coffee shop, the restaurant, and they have a button there to donate. Do you want to donate so-and-so your change to it may be a legitimate charity. If you decide, no, I don't want to, do you feel a little stab of guilt? Because you shouldn't. You shouldn't feel any more guilt there than you would feel when you decide, no, I'm not going to buy this product, I'm going to buy this other product. It is not your responsibility to heal the wounds of others. You may want to. Ayn Rand, the most selfish person who ever lived in the rational selfishness sense, contributed to Israel after it was attacked in the Six-Day War or the Yom Kippur War. And she did it as an act of standing up for justice, not as an act of, oh, the pathetic poor people, they're suffering. Lots of people suffer. Suffering is the sufferer's job to eliminate. You may want to help him, but if so, it's you wanting selfishly to see this other person better off, or this other group of people better off. So the standard is concern for your own interests is the essence of morality, your own rational self-interest, which includes, your rational self-interest includes the valuing of certain people, those whom you love and can say why you love, and the victims of injustice if you value justice, and you damn well better. So that is, do we have any, Irene, do we have any chat questions?
Not currently, no.
No. If anyone wants to ask a question, now is the time to do it. Otherwise, any final points, Peter?
Let me think for a second.
All right, well,
No.
I'll make a point while you think.
Okay.
Altruism is what unites everybody except objectivists. Altruism is what unites the Christians with the Marxists. The Marxists want to help the downtrodden, at least they say they do, and the Christians think that love thine enemy, love thy neighbor as thyself is the essence of morality. The Nazis were pro-altruism. This is not publicized, but I've researched the subject quite extensively. Hitler praises altruism. There was a saying in Nazi Germany, Gemeinschaft vor Eigenschaft, community needs before individual needs. The group goes before the individual. Well, what is that about? That is about non-you. The individual has no rights against the group because the group is many and has needs, whereas you could solve your problems presumably by your own efforts. So the Nazis, the Christians, and the Marxists, all, and this is not an exaggeration, are all holding and serious about the morality of self-sacrifice.
And politically, the important thing is to realize and to educate people about the fact that capitalism rests on egoism. Capitalism is a system based on the absolute right of the individual to his own life, his own liberty, and the pursuit of his own happiness. Those are very selfish values. It's a crime. It's worse than a crime. It's an atrocity that we have, particularly by conservatives, people who try to mollify the enemies of capitalism by saying, well, we're altruists too. Capitalism just is a better system of altruism than socialism is. Capitalism results in the greater public interest than does socialism. If you concede the premise that self-sacrifice is the standard by which to measure a political system, you've given it up. Then the socialists will win, as they've been winning for so long. This is exactly why they've been victorious, and the country, America, has gradually drifted more and more towards socialism or fascism. It's because people have accepted as a premise the standard is altruism. The standard is self-sacrifice. The standard is, are the rich being sacrificed for the sake of the poor, rather than is everybody's rights being protected, and everybody's rights inalienable. That's the individualist, egoistic approach to politics.
And if you think the extreme on one side is communism and the other side is fascism, you're sadly mistaken. Both of them uphold the sacrifice of the individual to the collective. The only difference is Nazism stands for National Socialism. National Socialism. The communists are international socialists. So the communists wanted to spread socialism by revolution across the world. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. And the Nazis wanted to conquer the world militarily. In the end, of course, both of them wanted to use the military might of the state to crush whomever they could and loot whomever they could. But there is no real difference between communism and Nazism. No real difference at all. The color of their uniforms is a little different. The way they goose step or march in the Soviet South is a little different, but they're identical. And they're both enacting the Christian morality. That's their motor. That's their reason for gaining power. That's why people supported them. They didn't support the Nazis or the communists by saying, I have rights, everybody has rights, let's have the government get away from us and protect us from criminals. Hardly. It was all about there are needs for national greatness, for the proletariat who's been exploited. We've got to take from the haves and give to the have-nots. That's what it's all about, and that's what Jesus was all about. So that's why the symbol on the thumbnail for this show shows a swastika, a hammer and sickle, and Christ on the cross, all put together. All right. Thank you very much, Peter.
We have a few questions.
You have questions?
Yeah,
You want to read them?
I can read them out. So one from Bonnie Bertrand. Is it possible that we inherited the altruistic mentality from the time when the herd or the tribe did offer survival advantage, and we're still in the process of recognizing that we're individuals?
No, let me jump in. It was never an evolutionary. There's so many things I disagree with in that statement. I'm just eager to jump in. There was never an advantage, ever, in the history of the human race or in the anthropoid precursors to the human race, in individuals not thinking, individuals sacrificing for anyone. And notice it's not a sacrifice if you provide for your children. You have children. Of course, in primitive times, they don't know about all this, but in any human sense, you have children because you want to have children, not because of a duty. And they are of value to you. Notice that people don't take care of other people's children, and I'm sure the animals are this way too. They take care of their own. So there never was an advantage, but if you thought there was, thought there had been, how do you explain 1776? That was an era in which people threw off the chains of altruism and herd dominance. So why did they come back? not because of any instinct, there are no instincts, but because of the universities pumping us through and through with altruist ideas, which ultimately come from religion. Why do you think that New York is a socialist city now, but say Fort Wayne, Indiana isn't? Why are all the centers of education and cultural advancement, so to speak, leftist? Why is every university town in the United States leftist compared to outside the university town? Because the poison is coming from the universities. The altruist philosophy got its dominance actually in coincidentally, the year 1776. A philosopher, Immanuel Kant, published in that year The Critique of Pure Reason, which argued reason cannot know reality. Perception is not even of reality. We're living in what we could now call the matrix, and we don't know what reality is. So the thing that we have to do is obey. Notice Immanuel Kant is a German philosopher. He started Germany on the path to altruism. Well, they were already religious, but he cemented it and protected religious morality from the advance of science by claiming to show that morality means duty, obedience, not thinking for yourself, because you can't know anyway. So it spread gradually from the philosophy departments in Germany to the philosophy departments in the United States and Europe, rest of Europe, and then to the world. The anti-reason, anti-mind, anti-self, anti-value philosophy of altruism and irrationalism that Immanuel Kant wrote several books to defend, and which no one could answer. No one until Ayn Rand was able to successfully answer it. Very deep reasoning, completely wrong. Wrong from start to finish. So if you ask yourself, why are university towns leftist? Immanuel Kant is the answer. Why is Hollywood leftist? Immanuel Kant. The more artistic and intellectual, educated people are more leftist. Why are young people coming out of universities something like 60 or 70% in favor of socialism, whereas the ordinary person on the assembly line in Fort Wayne is not, is against it? Because the person who's less in touch with modern trends in ideas is still riding on the momentum of Aristotelian philosophy through our founding father John Locke, who wrote in the 1680s and 1690s, which was much more individualistic, much more, in fact, Locke held, in my terms, he didn't say this, God put us on this earth in order that we should be happy egoists. And that was the high point in the rebellion against the morality of death, suffering, Christ on the cross, and the modern secular versions of it in communism and Nazism, fascism. So it comes from ideas. It doesn't come from a herd instinct, which there isn't any. Man has no instincts. Man has free will. Man forms his own mind. Unfortunately, that gives him the power to give up his mind and go with the herd. And a lot of people do that. But when the intellectual world is against that, you don't see it very much.
Can we go on to the next question? Or do you want to say something, Peter?
No, next question.
All right. From Frank Rockefeller. Isn't altruism keeping people as a means to others' ends, as a conscious moral slash political policy?
Say that again.
Go ahead, Nina,
Isn't,
because I can hear it.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly how it's meant to be read, but isn't altruism keeping people as a means to others' ends, as a conscious moral slash political policy?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is altruism. Altruism says you don't exist for yourself, you exist for the sake of others. You are a means to their ends, to their desires. That's what we've been saying here for the past 45 minutes.
I just thought of another concretization of the power of altruism. The Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, the Bill and Melissa Gates Foundation, all of them are premised on altruism. They're not based on rational value of individuals who deserve help. If they were really concerned with other people's well-being, they would have left the money in the businesses. Business serves the actual needs of others at a profit. That's what capitalism is. So when all these great rich men set up foundations to do charitable work, it's because they feel guilty. At best, they feel the absence of a moral sanction. They want to feel good about themselves. So, yeah, I gave everybody automobiles, Henry Ford is thinking, but that's not really good because I made a profit. So let me do something good that my name will go down as a benefactor. What could be more benefactoring of humanity than to provide everyone with automobiles at a price they could afford, which was not done before. It was not able to be done before. And he did it at a profit. He did it because he valued himself and his cars, not because he wanted to serve the needs like Mother Teresa did of the poor or something.
Great. We have one last question, but it's an off-topic question. I don't know if you want to respond. It's from Abmitos. The question is, what would you say is the current perception of Gibson and the Gibsonian theories of perception amongst modern objectivist scholars?
The concept of what?
So the current perception of Gibson and the Gibsonian theories of perception.
Well, I didn't get what the first term was. It sounded like distance.
Gibson.
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 J.J. Gibson?
The famous Gibson.
Yeah. Well, I think almost all objectivist scholars find an incredible amount of good ideas in J.J. Gibson's psychology, which is the psychology of perception. It's not really psychology in the sense of a theory of how the conceptual faculty and memory work, but it's really good. He calls it direct realism. He calls his theory of perception, well, he's deceased now, but he did call it direct realism. I personally find it to be extremely helpful and almost entirely correct. The other thing was the concept of perfection. I wrote an article, which is in my book, Ayn Rand's Philosophic Achievement and Other Essays by Harry Binswanger, on the possible dream. Perfection is the full satisfaction of a contextual standard of value. It's the third chapter in this thin volume of essays of mine. I recommend you read that because the idea you can never be perfect is a killer. It comes from the Christian perspective where full success means something that only Jesus could get. Well, that would be full morality. But that judging man and his actions, judging yourself by impossible standards, damns the standards used not you. All right, so that takes care of all the questions?
There's just one last one that someone just submitted.
Okay, fine.
I can paraphrase. It's from Sir Frogo of the Massimune. The question is basically like, is there some value in quasi-sacrificing for values like freedom or free speech? Or is that actually considered an actual sacrifice because these are actual values and therefore worth something?
Why would you sacrifice freedom of speech?
And you're sacrificing to fight for freedom or freedom of speech.
Oh, to fight for it.
Yeah.
No,
Those,
the fight for your values. I mean, you have a responsibility. No one owes you that they abide by the right or understand the right philosophy. Nobody promised you that you would be born into a world where everybody understands everything about morality. If you want to live in a rational culture, and boy, do you, it's up to you to take actions to educate or help others educate the public in the kind of thing we've been saying here. So it's not to fight for an actual value is selfish.
let me add, the question really is based on a distorted view of what sacrifice means. If you're fighting for freedom, I forget what the other parts were, that's a value to you. That's in your self-interest. Even soldiers who go and fight wars, if it's a legitimate war, in other words, if your country, let's say America, is actually threatened. So it's your freedom, your life that's being threatened by some outside foreign entity, then it's perfectly rational if you decide I'm going to fight for that. You're fighting for something that's a value to you, something that's beneficial to you. So don't think that just because it's an abstract value that it doesn't qualify as selfishness. Selfishness is not, a concrete bound idea. It's not just amassing as much money as possible. There are other values. There are moral values. There are spiritual values. There are artistic values. There are romantic values, political values, all those things which a rational person needs to lead a successful, happy life are part of your self-interest. And if you decide to fight for it, even at the extreme where you're risking your life, but you're risking your life because you don't want to live under slavery. So you decide, yes, I don't want to live under slavery. I'm going to do what I can to fight the country that threatens to impose slavery, even if it means my life is at risk. I'm willing to do it. That is not a sacrifice. A sacrifice means giving up something that's beneficial to you for the sake of something that isn't. That's what sacrifice means.
As Ayn Rand said, if you spend a penny to get a dollar, that's not a sacrifice. If you spend a dollar to get a penny, that is a sacrifice. I spoke about a week ago to a refugee from Iran who is in touch with the people in Iran now. He said in the beginning of the war, when Trump was promising, we're coming, hold on, which he then betrayed, this is under the heading of the people are not willing to live as slaves. The populace has turned against the regime, and when the Israeli planes started bombing Iran, the people, he said, went onto the rooftops to cheer on the bombing. So they were willing to risk their lives when they're not even taking any action just to see this hateful, destructive, murderous regime be ended, which they thought it was going to be, but has been betrayed by Trump. So it is true that people who actually live under slavery, under totalitarianism, know that it's worse than death. The better of them know that, and they're damn willing to fight at the risk of losing their lives rather than live under slavery. All right, now I think we can certainly stop. I want to thank Peter for very helpful points, very enlightening, and thank everyone for attending. Well, next week we should be back at 12 noon, not at this earlier time, which is pretty much a one-time deal. Thank you for attending HBTV. Thank you, Peter, for coming. See you next week.
Thank you.